a famed knight's haunted tomb and a frost elf princess's prison. And in the midst of those, you'll find your player characters tasked with reuniting lost lovers or severing their connection once and for all. That is the premise of Winter's Daughter for the Dolmenwood role-playing game from Necrotic Gnome and Exalted Funeral. And I will share my review right after this. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host, here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Before I dive on into today's review, I do want to remind you, if you enjoyed the Gaming Gang and would like to support the outlet, you can do so in a few ways. First, by utilizing our affiliate links to the One Bookshelf sites, such as DriveThruRPG. And to do so, simply visit thegaminggang.com, click on one of our banners. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get a small portion of that sale. You can also make a one-time donation by way of PayPal or become a monthly member of our Patreon. You'll find links in the show notes. Also, down in those show notes, you're going to find an invite link to our Discord server. It's absolutely free to sign up, so be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. Today, I'll be sharing my review of Dolmenwood Winter's Daughter from Necrotic Gnome and Exalted Funeral. This 32-page A5-sized hardcover with PDF carries an MSRP of $15. If you want to grab just the PDF alone, you can do so over at DriveThruRPG for $10. Having said all that, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got Winter's Daughter for Dolmenwood. Few things to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, my friends over at Exalted Funeral were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. These days, it's important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the adventure, but I do want to give you a good feel for what you're going to find inside. And then lastly, this is a role-playing game adventure, so if your referee has picked this up, maybe they just haven't started running it yet. Maybe they're talking about picking this up. Keep in mind, there are spoilers ahead. So as a player, I'm just warning you right up front. All right, first thing we're going to do is take a peek at the credits page. This is written by Gavin Norman, but there were other people who worked very hard to bring this to life. Let's give credit where credit is due. Now, as far as the maps, I always love the Old School Essentials maps, and the presentation of the Dolmenwood Adventures is very, very similar to Old School Essentials. In fact, map-wise, it's almost identical, and I definitely like that a ton. Now, the actual key location presentation is a little bit different. Not a ton, but just a hair. So we've got these maps here for us as well. Very nicely done. So this is an introductory adventure to Dolmenwood. So this is for levels 1 to 3. I got to be honest, a few years back, I could have swore I had an opportunity to take a look at a PDF for Winter's Daughter when it was for Old School Essentials. And I could have swore there was more to the adventure back then, that some of that's been trimmed out. I could have swore there was a bit more about the forests and the area around the knight's tomb. I thought there was like a witch involved. Then again, I could be misremembering it completely. It's not as if there aren't hundreds of role-playing game releases that I take a peek at. So, but for some strange reason, I thought there was a bit more to this when it was for Old School Essentials. Not to say that there's not enough already in this, but I thought there was just a bit more to it. One thing I definitely like about Winter's Daughter is it's not set in any particular location, because in the campaign book for Dolmenwood, there are different regions, and depending on the sort of campaign that the referee wants to run and the players want to experience, you'll probably set your adventuring in various different regions. So we do have options of where this takes place. So the premise of this adventure is hundreds of years ago, when the Cold Prince, the Frost Elf, was leading his forces. He controlled much of Dolmenwood. He was leading his forces in battle against the humans. There was a war going on. One of the famed knights actually met and fell in love with one of his daughters, and they would secretly sneak off for trysts and to, expand upon their love affair. And then, of course, she was found out, and she's imprisoned in Fairy, and the knight died in battle. So he's buried in a tomb. And then the player characters find themselves enmeshed in this adventure. Now, there are a few different hooks the referee can use to bring the players on board, anywhere from having dreams of this beautiful elven princess who a character falls in love with, and in the dreams she's telling them to go retrieve this ring and bring it to her. You could have an inheritance where the player characters, one of the player characters or multiple player characters, are related to Sir Chide, the heroic knight. They could be just tomb robbers as well who stumble across all this. There is some player background for your players to know certain things, which would be common knowledge about this famed hero. And then we just jump outside of the tomb. So if you are familiar with various different old school Essentials adventures, very, very similar in the presentation of these key locations. So you're going to find out, okay, so what are some things that are very, very obvious here? At first glance, what do the players see? So as an example, we got the tomb entrance. It's a thorny tangle, brambles and wild roses. There's a faint path to the door, which is disused and overgrown. The tomb door itself is a granite slab sealing the mound. It's overgrown and covered in lichen and wild roses. Talks about how do you move the slab? How do you break the slab? And then the stairs that lead down into the mound. So each of the key locations is going to be presented like this. And of course, if there are any adversaries or NPCs that the player characters can encounter, they will run across them as well. So what'll happen? Player characters are exploring this tomb. There's a few different rooms to it. There's a chapel to Saint Sedge. There's priest quarters. There are the sarcophagi of the rest of Sir Chide's family. His parents are there, a couple of brothers, a sister. There is a ghost. In fact, there's 3 ghosts. 2 of them are Sir Chide's parents. The other is Sir Chide. So the player characters have a lot of different ways to approach this adventure. If they want to go murder hoboing, they certainly can. They can go in there as tomb robbers and just try to take what they can get, and then maybe kind of get dragged into the proceedings that are taking place. Or maybe they're sent because they've inherited the sword and ring of Sir Chide. A lot of different things going on, a lot of different approaches that the player characters can take and the referee can present. Because one of the big selling points of Dolmenwood adventures, as well as old school Essentials adventures from Necrotic Gnome, there's no rails. These adventures aren't on rails. It's old school. So you're presented with a situation, you're presented with a location, and then the story emerges from the player character's actions, which then, of course, the NPCs respond to, and back and forth. So there are a lot of different ways that Winter's Daughter can play out. And I really appreciate that a ton. So what'll eventually happen is the player characters will discover there's a ring, and if they bring the ring to the princess, then she will be reunited with her long-lost love. Now, the ring can also be destroyed, which puts an end to all of this once and for all. So the player characters will find themselves transported to Fairy, and there is a prison that the princess is trapped in. But you also have to keep in mind, she is the daughter of the Cold Prince, so it's not as if she's living in squalor or anything like that. In fact, there's a wedding feast that's been set up, and it's been set up for hundreds of years because the fairy princess still has hope that she and her love will be reunited. So this has a really cool fairy tale vibe going on to it. A little dark in some respects, but that's cool with me. I definitely dig Dolmenwood. If you happen to see my reviews, I think it is absolutely spectacular. It was one of my absolute favorite role-playing game releases I got to review last year. This adventure is a really nice introduction to that sort of fairy tale vibe. It's got a little whimsy to it. It's got a little darkness to it as well. And the way the adventure will play out is not set in stone. There are a lot of things that could happen. There are a lot of battles that could take place. And there is even the opportunity to probably complete this adventure without resorting to violence at all. So pretty nicely done. Very interesting premise here. So that is Winter's Daughter for Dolmenwood from Necrotic Gnome and Exalted Funeral. Once again, this 32-page A5 size hardcover with PDF carries an MSRP of $15. If you want to grab just the PDF, you can do so over at DriveThruRPG for $10. Let's swing on over to the other camera. I'm going to share some final thoughts as well as my review score. I think Winter's Daughter will make for a fun introduction to Dolmenwood. I think it'll really shine if the referee has maybe already done a little bit of an intro adventure for the players to kind of introduce them to this setting, as opposed to just dropping them into this. Maybe even do a little foreshadowing with the NPCs in a previous adventure, as far as like hearing stories about Sir Chide and the great love affair he had, because it's common knowledge. It's not some big secret that there was this romance going on. It's just what's happening behind the scenes isn't known. So really nicely done. This is probably good for a couple of sessions. I can't see it going for more than maybe 2 sessions. So maybe one session is what's going on in Sir Chide's tomb. Second session, probably the goings on in the prison, which is a small tower that the princess is being kept in. This should be a lot of fun. This is a great introduction to Dolmenwood as well. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I give Dolmenwood, Winter's Daughter, an 8 out of 10. I think you'll enjoy it. I think your players will enjoy it, especially if they're into kind of a dark fairy tale vibe, which is what Dolmenwood itself gives off. So good stuff. Check it out. All right, that is it for this time out. If you liked the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell, because it'll not only let you know when I share videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thank you very much for watching. And until I see you next time, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.